believe it's time for us to begin. Can you hear me okay, or too loud? Maybe down a little bit? Okay. Well, if everybody keeps moving away, I'll know it's too loud. If everybody moves forward, nobody's going to move forward no matter what. Okay. I will be teaching for this quarter, and I'm actually going to, the topic will be spiritual patriots, Jude's call to arms. So we'll actually be going through the book of Jude, which is one chapter, so we'll take 13 weeks to talk about one. But this book is by Aubrey Johnson, which is a Church of Christ preacher. You know, when Peter asked me to teach, he just says, teach the adults. It's like, well, what can I teach the adults? But so I go to the bookstore, I kind of look around and try to find books, and most books that okay, well, there you go. If you go, you can say that. Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Then I'm talking about this guy, and he's actually a good guy. So, but my point is, when you go to a Christian bookstore, religious bookstore, most times the material that you have, you really have to go through it. And so this is good, but Mark talked about it a little bit. I think I'm going to run my class tonight about what happened Sunday night, Monday. And so what I want to talk about tonight, and I think that as a body, we need to think about the good and the evil. I woke up about 3 o'clock Monday morning, Sunday night, Monday morning, and kind of looked at Facebook, and my son-in-law is in the FBI. Now, I don't know if that's how she got, but there was a her, and it was praying for all Las Vegas. So when Lynn put that out, I thought, why would she be? So I tried to see what was going on. And well, at that time, at 3 in the morning, it was about 20 injured and 2 possibly dead. So I sleep, wake up then at 5:36 and start seeing things that are going on. Obviously, for the next 2 days, I drove quite a bit, so I listened to a lot of the radio and talk shows. And obviously, the question is why. And none of us know why. But one thing that President Trump said is that it was an evil deed. And when you think about our nation that we live in today, you know, we can start in the beginning. I mean, there was good and there was evil. So it's not me? I'll let you go. Okay? That's okay. Can you hear me now? But in the world we live in today, in our nation, we have good. You know, the society we live in, the world that we live in, and when we have a society that and I don't care for the Clemson coach, Dabo Swinney, because of what he did to Ohio State, and I don't know if this was something that he just said recently, but I know that last year, the time when the NFL players were having the issue of respect, and when they started asking the college coaches about it, what Dabo Swinney said, it's not a matter of respect in our nation. What is lacking in our nation is Jesus. And what we need is more people in that position to say what our nation needs is God. What our nation needs is Jesus. This man didn't have God and Jesus in his life. This 64-year-old man, we obviously don't know a lot about him still at this point, but someone that does have evil in their hearts and in their mind does something to that effect. And who knows what we'll find out about that individual. So what I thought we would do tonight And if we don't spend much time on it because you don't want to do it, then we'll go to spiritual patriots, and we'll talk about that. So that's what I prepared for up until this morning when I thought we're going to go a different way tonight. And, you know, there was a girl named Amanda Todd. Does anyone remember that name? Amanda Todd? A 15-year-old girl. 15-year-old girl that on October the 10th, 2012, committed suicide. Why did this 15-year-old girl commit suicide? Because she was bullied. She was bullied. Our nation, the nation that we live in today, we raise kids who have no respect for one another. And that bullying is a regular term used now to talk about part of our society. And here's somebody that and I don't know anything about this girl, but I just know that looking at evil in our world, when classmates at that age can bully someone to the point of death. I talked about it in one of my classes last time where there was like an 8-year-old boy in Cincinnati that did that hung himself, that was bullied in school. When we think about good, what do we think about when we think about good? Hopefully you think of the church. You think of the flag. You think of America. You think of good things. But what do you think when you think of evil? There's a lot more you can think about when you think about evil, because there's so many more examples that we have of evil. In Proverbs 23, verse 7, says basically says, "For as a man thinketh, so is he." And so again, when you think about that proverb, if someone will read it, Proverbs 23:7. Or Herschel, you might be able to quote it. Proverbs 23:7. Should just have my phone. I'd already be there.
For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with me.
Okay, so as a man thinketh in his heart, that's what he is. And so, again, it's trash in, trash out. If what I'm doing on a daily basis is evil, if it's violence, if it's pornography, if it's whatever it might be, and that's what I'm filling into my system, then what's coming out of my system? Evil. Whatever I put into it, that's what it is. So in the same token, if I'm studying my Word, if I'm waking up and I'm studying the Word, and I'm positive in my mind, what's my mind like? You know, I was thinking about this, and I thought, these lips that are going to say this now, I can drive out of the parking lot tonight and somebody can cut me off, and what can I do? From singing praises to God and praying to God, but what can I do in 2 minutes after church? Yeah, I can tell them off. I could just... And I thought about that. I thought how quickly we can turn from this to that, the Jekyll and Hyde. But how many of us that if we don't train ourselves, that we don't fall into that? How easy it is to snap, to be somebody else. Oh. You know, last Monday and Tuesday I went to Millersburg. Now, I don't go to Millersburg because I want to. I went to Millersburg because I had to. And so what's in Millersburg is Amish, and it's carts, and it's buggies. And when you're going 55, 65 coming down a hill and there's a buggy and there's a car coming, you got to slow down. And now you can beep and honk and do whatever, but it's just what it is. You just have to be careful of that. But that's when I thought how easy it would be to Jekyll and Hyde, to be singing praises and then yelling at somebody, calling them names or doing something, because it's easy to do that. In the society we live in today, it's easy to be that, the bad side. There's a book entitled Isaac Storm, which is about a hurricane that hit Galveston, Texas. So in 1900, apparently everyone was convinced that a hurricane could never strike Galveston. Even as one approached, the author of this book vividly describes how the streets began to flood, but the people went about their business as nothing was wrong. Children played in the water. Men gathered for breakfast at a local diner, and no one fled from the storm that was about to strike. Some people didn't worry because Isaac Klein, the National Weather Service officer in Galveston, assured them it would not be a severe storm. Others simply believed that Galveston was invincible. Some people thought that since they had never seen a hurricane strike Galveston, one never would. So for a number of reasons, people assured themselves that nothing bad would happen. As a result, over 6,000 people died one September day in 1900 because of a storm, a hurricane that hit Galveston that hadn't happened before. Mark talked about it in his devotional. People go about their lives. They're warned. We're warned that our life's just a vapor in James. None of us know none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed the next breath. So those people in Las Vegas that night were partying and having a good time. Last thing they thought about was that some nut was on the 32nd floor and it's going to start raining down bullets on those folks. In Galveston, Texas, they didn't think there would be a hurricane. They went about their business. And 6,000 people died. On 9/11 in New York, people went about their business because a plane had never struck an office tower like that. So we go about our business as Christians, as Americans, living our lives, not knowing what tomorrow brings. So, because evil exists in our world, it's always existed. So let's think about that. Did God create evil? Isn't that a question people ask? Did God create evil? Did God create everything? Was anything not created? What was in the garden that they weren't supposed to do? Knowledge of what? Good and evil. So there was in the garden, evil was there, right? I mean, that's what the tree was called. They could do everything they could do, but not do that. Everything else they could do, but not do that. I've talked about it for years when we worked with the youth. There's a line here, and this is the world. Instead of being so far away from it, as close as we can. Well, he created everything. There was a tree of knowledge of good and evil there. Now, how it happened or whatever, and I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you that in the garden was a tree of good and evil. David?
You can also ask the question, did he create people for good and evil? He created us to do good, but we also have the possibility of choosing not to do good and do evil.
Proverbs 23. In a man's heart, so he is. Adam and Eve were created by God. I mean, they communed with God, and it was just a serpent that tempted Eve, and it was there. Mark? Through the temptation of Eve, right. David? You? Yeah. Yeah. Travis?
What was the name of that tree that they ate from?
The tree of knowledge of good and evil?
So, the knowledge of that exists.
Right.
And, of course, that's not a bad thing. It's very good to know of evil to avoid it. And I find that quite interesting as well.
Yeah. No. And that's the same thing for us. I mean, think about, in studying for this, then think about, why is it wrong for me to commit adultery? I don't know why I picked that one, but why is that wrong? But it's a sin, because God said it's a sin. I mean, that's why. Why can't I commit murder? Because it's a sin. I mean, that's why if there was no law, if there was no law that said you can't go over 55 miles an hour, then what would we have? We'd have chaos. I mean, Nikki, if you were on the road every day and there was no speed limit, no laws, how bad would it be? So, while we have the knowledge of evil, is we have that knowledge. We know, and we'll get to it. But I think we'll get to it. But I have a voice basically saying to me every day. I have Satan right here, whether he's like me in a horn or whatever. But I have Satan right here every day of my life. I have Satan right there, and he's whispering in my ear. It's okay, Ned. You'll live to be 90. Don't worry about it. You can repent. Don't worry about it. Go do that. No, you can do it. Don't worry. I mean, is that what you have as a Christian? Right there? Whispering to you every day, telling you, it's okay. Take that first drink. It won't bother you. Go ahead. Tell that joke.
So, are you saying if you do something wrong, it's Satan's fault?
No, not at all. It's your choice. Now, you're tempted. I mean, it's not Satan's fault Eve took the temptation. It's Eve's fault that sin came into the world. It's Adam's fault that he did. Satan did his job. Exactly. He'll give us a way out. It's our choice. We are, as long as we're competent and we have the ability to understand, which all of us in this room do, it's our choice. And we can listen to that voice, and we can listen to it and say, nah, I'm not going to partake of it. I'm not going to do that because, this Stephen Paddock could have said whatever he was listening to, I'm not going to kill people. But for whatever reason, he listened to that said, kill as many as you can. Whether it's because they're Republicans, whether it's their country, who knows what? We don't know yet. Mark? Sure. Sure. Satan's job is to take everybody down with him. However he can do that. Whatever form he could take the form of a serpent, whether he could use your spouse, your boss, your best friend. He will use whatever vehicle tool he can to make you sin. That's what we need to choose is how we're going to live our lives. We can become a commune. We can say, there's too many bad things that happen in the world. We're just all going to move into the church building and live right here on this compound. That's what we're going to do. Or we can live our lives and live it every day that it could be our last. Nikki?
So, bottom line, God did not create evil.
No, he didn't create evil, the knowledge of evil. Satan then has taken it and ran with it.
Perhaps that's going to be the same thing, but we think of evil as all these really awful, terrible, dark things. Evil simply is disobedience to God.
Yeah.
Disobedience to that which is right. And so, it may be disrespect to your parents. It may be, there's so many different levels of it. But pure and simple, God made it good without evil, and we introduced it.
Right, exactly. David? This is the old age class.
Just as easily and did create beings that would do no wrong, that would praise him day in, day out for the period of even eternity. But that's not what you want. You want somebody that would worship him out of love and respect. That's why he gave us that ability to worship him.
And I've said it before, whether it's in a sermon or class, God could have made us robots. He could have made Adam and Eve robots and totally protected them, taken that tree and not even put it in the garden. But that's not God. We all have a choice. But what God has given us, he says, I'm going to give you the opportunity for heaven. Streets of gold. You're going to be there with Jesus Christ. You're going to be there with so on and so on. Gave us a picture. But more importantly, he gave us a real picture of hell, didn't he? Of damnation, gnashing of teeth, of darkness. I don't know about you, but I hate darkness. I mean, I don't like to go out in the dark without a light if I don't know what's out there. People like to scare you. So you got to be careful of things like that. But that's darkness. I mean, that's what's waiting for those who choose evil. That's what you have. He's given us that. That's our choice. He could have made us all robots where we just go and we do what he tells us. But he didn't do that. He gave us the free will to make choices. Oh, I mean, 2 people. I mean, the very first 2 people. And then think about their sons. I mean, Cain. I mean, it wasn't just evil. He called him a name. He killed his brother. I mean, you know, when you think about how evil came into the being. And then, you know, it wasn't long that he had to destroy the whole world because of evil that's there. So, if man's given the opportunity, it's easy to go that way. Yes, sir.
Just think of a drug wall factory. Little robots. No market. No eating. No repair code. No Sunday dinner.
No, exactly, and that's not the world. The world we live in, while there's bad, but there is good. There's good in our world. We can look at what Jesus did. Jesus lived his whole life. And when we get into Jude, and the author in Jude, but it's kind of hard to comprehend that his own brothers, half-brothers, didn't realize the power of this man. I mean, 30 years they lived, well, not 30, but they lived with him, and they didn't understand. Pardon me? It was when he died and was raised. That's when, we'll get there. But, I mean, Jesus lived his life for that and didn't have, even his home family, didn't realize who he was and respect him and give him that. I mean, he came here for us, and then we turn around and say, okay, I'm going to be your servant. I'm going to be baptized. But then we're going to say, oh, you know what? I'm not going to go today. You know, Jesus says, come. Remember what I did for you every Lord's Day. Well, I don't need it today. I don't need it. Mark?
You're right. The good and the bad. We tend to focus on the bad. Like after that shooting, one of the news outlets kind of said it was. We're talking about how many people were helping others.
Oh, no, yes.
Shelter, another lady who'd been hit, and she put her body on top of her.
Yeah.
But we don't.
No, you hear those stories. I heard one where they went to a truck to take people, and the truck's sitting there and it had a key in it. What are the odds that it would have the key? I mean, yes, there's good. Yeah, that's. Oh, it's. There's good. Yes. Yeah. 2 weeks ago, we had a Church of Christ shooting. Now, for some reason, that wasn't national news. We didn't hear a lot about that. A black man in a hood goes in and shoots Christians, and it doesn't make the news. But even going to church, a lady lost her life. I mean, there's things we have no control over, but there's evil in the world. And what we have to do is live our life. And so what Paul tells us, turn to Ephesians, the 5th chapter. There is scripture with this tonight, so it's not just current events or cupcakes. No, I don't. So they might have them in the back, Nikki. That's what Travis was asking, if I had cupcakes for the class. In Ephesians, the 5th chapter, verse 15, Paul says, "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dispensation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord, giving thanks always for all the things to God the Father, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ." So, he's telling us there that there's evil, but we have to be wise in that time. We have to realize in the times that we live now, there are evil. It's all around us. It's when you go home tonight and you watch the 10 o'clock news, because you can't stay up till 11, but you watch the 10 o'clock news, I can guarantee you there's probably a shooting in Columbus tonight. Some teen's been shot by someone else. It's almost every night anymore. That's what's there. No, that's good. It's depressing. But my point is that if you do watch it, there's probably violence that's happening right now at this very time. And you would say if they were here, that wouldn't have happened to them. But that's not given an option to a lot of people. A lot of kids grow up today without this opportunity. And there are people who had this opportunity, have rejected it and said, I don't need it. But the world we live in, we have to have Christ. In Ephesians 6, 10 through 12 says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm. Galatians 6, verse 7 says that, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. If we sow good, we will reap good. If we sow evil, we will reap evil. And many years ago, a man in Carthage, Missouri, who had been a heavy drinker for most of his life, one day he went next door to a neighbor and shot and killed him. When the police arrested the man, he didn't even know what had happened. It was said that he had drank so much throughout his life that he had destroyed his brain and didn't know what he was doing most of the time. Here's an example of a good man dying and didn't do anything because of the consequences of someone else who decided at a young age to drink, and it just basically destroyed his life, and then he could go kill and have no effect on him. So sometimes good things happen to bad things happen to good people. And I guess some good things happen to bad people too. But for our purposes, there are bad things that happen to good people. It's inevitable that as we live our life, something bad can happen, whether it's an accident, vehicle, attending a football game or a concert or something else that could be a bomb. It's just the world we live in today, you don't know. But we have to live our lives every day, like Mark talked about in the devotion, that it could be our last. So we have to know that if I'm taken out today, I know what awaits me is heaven. We know where I'll be. But if we don't have that confidence, we need to fix that, because that's what we have to have. Because none of us are guaranteed anything. In Ephesians 6:12, well, we read that, but the point there is that our struggle is with the prince of darkness. What Satan is power, what he has the ability to do, he knows us. He knows where our weaknesses are, and that's where he tempts us. We all know who Paul Harvey was. Do we? Well, I guess maybe there are some young people in here who don't know who Paul Harvey is. Paul Harvey was the rest of the story. But in 1964, Paul Harvey put in an essay in the newspaper, and it said, if I was the prince of darkness, I would want to engulf the whole world in darkness. I'd have a third of the real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I would not be happy until I have seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I would set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first, and I would begin with the campaign of whispers. With the whispers of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince the children that man created God instead of the other way around. I'd confine that what's bad is good and what's good is square. Now think about, this is 1964, and what he's saying, how many of those things apply today that are just basically, that's how it is. And the old I would teach to pray after me, our Father which are in Washington. Then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lewd literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull or uninterested. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves until each, in its turn, was consumed. And with the promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerized media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellect by neglecting the discipline emotions. I'd tell teachers to let those students run wild. And before you know it, you'd have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. 1964. With a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing and judges promoting pornography. Soon I would evict God from the courthouse and the schoolhouses and then from the houses of Congress. In his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and defy science. I'd lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give it to those who wanted it until I had killed the incentive of ambition. Whatever you bet I could get, whatever you bet I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I'd convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, and you would see it on television to be that way. And thus, I could undress you in public and lure you into bed with diseases for which there are no cures. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing. So 1964, this is what Paul Harvey saw in our nation. And look where we are today. Think of our schools, where our kids go. Think about television. It's just... No, that's the bell. Oh, no, we're removing God from our nation, and we're paying the price as a nation. Thank you. Next week we'll be on